Never thought I would live to see the day when my own son-in-law mocked me. He didn't whisper behind my back, no. He looked me straight in the eyes across the dinner table and laughed. "Tell me, old man," he said with a smirk, "how does it feel to be useless, to sit there eating food you didn't earn, knowing your time is almost up?" His words cut deeper than any knife. My daughter sat beside him, silent, eyes downcast. She didn't defend me. She didn't even look at me. That silence, it hurt more than his laughter. I wanted to speak, to remind him who I was, the man who built the house he now lived in, the father who sacrificed everything so his wife could have a future. But I stayed quiet. At 72 years old, people see only weakness in me. They forget the years of sweat, the nights I worked while others slept. They forget that I still hold one final truth. And when my lawyer reads my will aloud, Peter will learn just how wrong he was. You know, people see an old man and think he's just a burden, someone who takes more than he gives. But they never stop to ask what kind of life he lived, what battles he fought, and what sacrifices he made to bring his children into this world. I wasn't always this frail figure you see now. I was strong once. My hands, these hands were calloused from years of labor. I laid bricks under the burning sun. I carried lumber until my back ached. I drove trucks at night, barely sleeping, just so my children could wake up in the morning with food on the table. I remember when my daughter, Emma, was born. The nurse placed her in my arms, and I promised her, right then, right there, that I would never let her suffer. I promised her the world, even though all I had was a pocket full of coins. Her mother and I, we didn't have much, but we had love. Our home was small, but it was filled with laughter, with warmth, with music on Sunday mornings, and prayers before bed. And I truly believed that love was enough to hold a family together forever. But time changes people. When Emma grew older, she wanted more than I could give. She saw her friends wearing fine clothes, living in bigger houses, and she looked at me differently. I worked harder, pushed myself further, gave every last ounce of strength to make her dreams come true. I put her through school. I saved for her wedding. I even gave her the keys to the very house I built, my house, so she and Peter could start their life together. I thought I was doing the right thing. A father's duty is to lift his children higher than himself, isn't it? To give them wings, even if it means breaking your own back to build the nest? But after her mother passed, something changed. The laughter in our family vanished. Emma became colder, distant. And Peter, well, Peter never once respected me. He saw me not as a father-in-law, but as a weak old man clinging to the past. He didn't see the nights I came home with bleeding hands. He didn't see the hunger I endured so my children could eat first. He didn't see the tears I shed beside my wife when we wondered how to pay the bills. No, all he saw was an old man in his house, eating his food, breathing his air. And my daughter, my sweet little Emma, she let him believe that. She let him treat me that way. But what they don't know, what they could never imagine, is that every sacrifice I made, every dollar I saved, every decision I took, it all led to one final truth. A truth written down in black and white, sealed in an envelope,
waiting for the day the lawyer would open it and speak it aloud. And on that day, Peter's laughter would die in his throat.
The cruelty didn't stop at that dinner table. No, that was only the beginning. Peter had a way of making his insults sound like jokes. He would laugh, clap me on the back, and say things like, "Careful there, old man. Don't break a hip reaching for the salt." Everyone at the table would laugh with him. Everyone except me. I could take the words. Words are just air, after all. But what broke me was Emma's silence. She never told him to stop. She never looked at him with disapproval. Instead, she'd lower her eyes, twist her fingers nervously, and pretend not to hear. Do you know what it feels like? To raise a child, to pour your soul into her life, only to have her sit beside the man who humiliates you and say nothing? It is like dying slowly, a little more each day. One evening, it became worse. Peter came home drunk, slamming doors and shouting. I was sitting in the living room reading my Bible when he staggered in. He sneered at me. There he is, the saintly old man, sitting in my chair under my roof. Tell me, when are you planning to leave? Or are you going to haunt this place until you drop dead? I looked at him. My lips trembled, but I said nothing. He laughed. Oh, how he laughed, and turned to Emma. Why do we keep him here? He's like an old dog that won't die, always in the way, eating food we pay for, taking up space. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't defend me. She just whispered, "Please, Peter, not tonight." Not tonight. That was all she said. I felt my chest tighten. My heart wasn't what it used to be, and the pain of those words pressed heavy on me. I excused myself and went to my room. Behind the closed door I wept, not for myself, but for the daughter I once knew. The little girl who used to run into my arms, who used to call me her hero, was gone. In her place sat a woman too afraid or too unwilling to defend her own father. But I endured. Day after day I bore the humiliation. I swallowed their insults like bitter medicine, because I knew something they didn't. You see, while Peter believed the house, the land, and everything in it belonged to him, the truth was different. Legally, it was still mine, and though I had given Emma the keys, I had never given away my rights. My lawyer knew every detail. The papers were safe, sealed, waiting. Still, my heart ached, for it was never about the money, never about the property. It was about respect, about love, about dignity. And when even your own child denies you that, what else is left for an old man to live for? But God works in silence. He waits for the right time, and I knew their laughter would not last forever, because when the will was read, the truth would echo louder than Peter's cruelest words. After that night, something inside me shifted. I realized Peter would never respect me, and Emma would never find the courage to stop him. My presence in that house had become a burden in their eyes. But what they didn't know was that every insult, every cold glance, every laugh at my expense was being written into the story of their future. One morning, I put on my old coat, the same one I wore when I worked construction, and I walked to my lawyer's office downtown. My steps were slow, heavy, but my mind was sharp. Every corner of that office smelled like old wood and paper, the scent of truth, the scent of justice. My lawyer, Mr. Grant, was an old friend. He had known me for decades. When I walked in, he looked up from his desk, surprised. "John," he said, "you look tired." "I am," I told him, "but there's something I need to do, something final." We sat together for hours. I explained everything, the years of sacrifice, the house I built with my own hands, the way Peter mocked me under my own roof. I told him how Emma sat in silence, how her loyalty had drifted away from her father to the man who belittled me. Mr. Grant listened without interruption. His eyes softened, and he nodded slowly. "You've carried enough pain, John. Let's make this right." And so we prepared the papers, not just any papers, my will. I thought long and hard about what to do. At first I considered leaving the house to Emma anyway, out of love, despite her silence. But then I remembered Peter's smirk, his mocking words, and the way Emma lowered her head instead of defending me. No, they needed to understand what true loss felt like. They needed to know that respect cannot be faked and love cannot be bought. So I wrote it down, every detail of where my life's work would go after I was gone. Not to Peter, not to Emma, but to someone who had shown me kindness in my final years. Her name was Clara, my neighbor's daughter, a gentle soul who often stopped by with warm meals, who carried my groceries when my back ached, who treated me not as a burden, but as a man. She reminded me of Emma when she was little, before life hardened her heart. Yes, Clara would inherit the house, the land, the savings, everything. And Emma and Peter, they would receive a letter I wrote with trembling hands, explaining why I made this choice, not out of spite, not out of anger, but out of truth. Mr. Grant folded the papers, sealed them in a thick envelope, and looked at me. "Are you certain?" he asked. I nodded, more certain than I've ever been. When I left his office, a strange peace settled over me. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. For the first time in years, I felt like I had taken control of my life again. Peter could laugh, Emma could stay silent, but one day soon, they would sit in that lawyer's office expecting riches and security, and instead they would hear the truth, my truth, spoken aloud, word for word. And on that day, the weight of every insult, every cruel laugh, every act of silence would come crashing down upon them, not by my hand, not by anger, but by justice. The day finally came. It was a gray morning, the kind where the clouds hang heavy and the air feels thick with something unspoken. I had passed quietly in my sleep just a week before. No grand goodbyes, no final speeches, just silence. And now Emma and Peter sat in Mr. Grant's office, dressed in black. Their faces were somber, but I know my son-in-law well enough to imagine the thoughts swirling inside his head. He wasn't grieving me. He was waiting for the prize, the house, the land, the money,
the reward for tolerating the old man a little longer. Mr. Grant, steady and serious as ever, shuffled the papers on his desk. His voice was calm when he began. "Thank you for being here today. We are here to read the last will and testament of John Whitmore." Peter leaned back in his chair with that same smirk I had seen so many times before. He squeezed Emma's hand, not out of love, but out of excitement. In his mind, this was their moment. Mr. Grant cleared his throat and began. "To my beloved daughter, Emma, you were once the light of my life. From the moment I held you in my arms, I swore to protect you, to provide for you, and to give you a future brighter than mine. And I did all I could to keep that promise. But as the years went on, I saw your silence grow louder than your love. When I was mocked, you stayed quiet. When I was shamed, you lowered your eyes. My heart broke more each day." Emma's lips trembled. Her eyes welled with tears. She gripped Peter's hand tighter. Peter, impatient, interrupted. "Yes, yes, sentimental words. Let's get to the inheritance." Mr. Grant shot him a sharp look and continued reading. "To my son-in-law, Peter, I leave you nothing. Not out of hatred, but because you already took what you wanted in life. My daughter's loyalty, her voice, her respect for her own father. You wanted my home, my table, my dignity, but you will not have my legacy." Peter's smirk vanished. His face flushed red, and he leaned forward in disbelief. "What is this nonsense?" he barked. "Surely there's a mistake." But Mr. Grant didn't stop. His voice grew firmer. "And so to Clara, the young woman who showed me kindness when I was most forgotten, I leave everything: the house, the land, the savings, every piece of my life's work, because she reminded me of the daughter I once knew, a daughter who loved her father before the silence took her voice away." Emma let out a soft sob. Tears streamed down her face. She gripped Peter's hand tighter. "No, no, this can't be," she whispered. Peter shot to his feet, slamming his fist on the desk. His voice echoed through the office, filled with rage. But Mr. Grant simply handed him the sealed letter I had written, the final message they were meant to hear. Peter tore it open with shaking hands, and Emma leaned in close as he read the words aloud. "My child, I do not leave you with bitterness, but with truth. Love without respect is no love at all. Silence in the face of cruelty is as sharp as the cruelty itself. I gave you my heart, and in return you gave me your silence. That silence was louder than Peter's laughter. And so I leave you not with wealth, but with a lesson. The greatest inheritance a parent can give is not money or land, but love. And when that love is met with silence, it dies." Emma broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. She buried her face in her hands, shaking her head. "I'm sorry, Papa. I'm so sorry." But apologies came too late. Peter stormed out of the office, cursing, his pride shattered. And Emma, she sat there in the chair, staring at the letter through her tears, realizing the truth she had refused to see. She had lost her father long before she lost his inheritance. Meanwhile, Clara sat quietly in the corner, tears in her eyes as well. She hadn't expected any of this. She rose to her feet, clutching the documents Mr. Grant handed her, and whispered, "I'll take care of the house. I'll honor him." And in that moment, justice was done. Not through anger, not through violence, but through truth. For sometimes the loudest voice is the one that speaks from beyond the grave.
Weeks passed after the will was read. The house, once filled with bitterness and silence, now stood in a new light. Clara moved in quietly, not to claim riches, but to preserve memories. She treated every corner with respect, polishing the wood John had cut with his own hands, watering the garden he once tended, and keeping his favorite chair by the fireplace just as he left it. Neighbors noticed the difference. The house no longer felt heavy. It was alive again, cared for by someone who saw its worth, because she saw his worth. Emma, however, could not escape her conscience. She would walk past the house some evenings, staring at the windows glowing with Clara's light. She would remember her father sitting there in the dark, alone, waiting for her to say a word she never said. Guilt weighed on her like chains. She replayed the words of his letter in her mind. Silence in the face of cruelty is as sharp as the cruelty itself. She realized now that her silence had been louder than Peter's laughter. And though Peter raged and cursed, blaming John, blaming Clara, blaming everyone but himself, Emma knew deep inside that her father's words were true. Sometimes at night, Emma would whisper, "I'm sorry, Papa," but the walls never answered. The grave never spoke back. Regret had become her only inheritance. Clara, on the other hand, lived differently. She didn't see the house as hers alone. She invited children from the neighborhood to play in the yard, just as John once allowed Emma to do. She shared meals with the elderly neighbors, just as John once sacrificed meals for his family. She turned his home into a place of kindness, a living legacy of the man the world had forgotten, but who refused to let his voice die in silence. One evening, Clara sat on the porch as the sun dipped low in the sky. A soft breeze carried the smell of earth and pine, the same scent John loved. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Don't worry, Mr. Whitmore. Your story isn't forgotten. I'll keep it alive." And in that moment, though he was gone, it felt as if the old man was smiling, not because he left wealth behind, but because his truth had finally been heard. The lesson was simple, yet eternal. Respect cannot be bought. Love cannot survive in silence. And sometimes the richest inheritance is not money, but the justice of a voice that refuses to die. My friend, if you take anything from this story, let it be this: never let silence be louder than love. If someone you love is mocked, stand for them. If someone you cherish is slipping away, speak before it's too late. Because one day all that will remain is the echo of words left unsaid, and that